Mr. Brian Price. Glad you could be here today.
Thanks, Jamie.
Question for you, and I'll get right to it because I know your time is precious. What have been some of the challenges you've had to face being from a pitching background and now being a field manager for the first time?
You know, I think that one of the great challenges is that I'm inheriting a really good team. You know, typically in these situations, it may be at times be in rebuilding mode, trying to turn an organization around. We're really looking to try to take our playoff expectations to a higher level, you know. So some of the challenges certainly is being kind of more front and center, being more involved in some of the organizational decisions that I haven't been involved in in the past, further establishing relationships with the position players, and then obviously coming into the seasons having to make a lot of the big in-game decisions.
Obviously, it would have been a tougher challenge if you were new to the organization. Had you thought about going maybe to Seattle, maybe to Philadelphia, other places your name had been rumored to?
No, you know what? I was once I found out I was going to get an interview, my sole focus was on the Reds job. I'm familiar. I really have a great deal of respect for the ownership and the general manager and the front office, Walt Jockey, Bob Castellini. Players are terrific. I think anyone that follows the Reds knows what type of character we have with this ball club as well as the talent. So it's a dream job.
You've been quoted as saying that you're an optimist, and I'm going to read a direct quote. There's no reason to think that just because we didn't make some massive move or reshuffled our roster that we shouldn't be optimistic about winning, end quote. How do you sell it to the fan base?
Well, let's just take a look at what we accomplished in 2013, and this is a season that was spent primarily without the availability of Ryan Ludwig, of Johnny Cueto. We had our two top left-handed, right-handed setup men, and Marshall and Broxton missed the bulk of the season. We still found a way to get ourselves to 90 wins and into the postseason. You could make an argument that what we're getting through free agency or trades are some of our most established players, our most successful players are coming back to us, hopefully for a full season healthy.
Welcome back in the 2014 Cincinnati Reds Caravan. This stop in Pikeville at the East Kentucky Expo Center, and a great crowd assembled today for this radio stop, and joined now by one of the favorites in the Cincinnati Reds organization, has been for several years, Homer Bailey, Mr. No Hit. Welcome to Pikeville, Kentucky.
Thanks. We're glad to be here.
Before we talk baseball, before we talk contracts and things like that, because you're going to hear those questions so many times over the course of this caravan, what does it mean for the players, for the Reds, to get out into Reds country and meet the fans and see how far stretching Reds country is?
Well, like I said earlier, you know, every year it seems like they add another leg. I remember doing a caravan where they only had one, and now that they've got up to four, and to see that it, you know, goes north, south, east, and west, you know, you're kind of all over the map. So it's pretty impressive to see that, you know, that kind of span can cover that much distance.
Homer Bailey, since your arrival to the major leagues, a lot of expectations. You were highly anticipated as a Reds player since you were drafted. Now 2 no-hitters. How has life changed for Homer Bailey?
Not a whole lot different. You know, I really don't think about the no-hitters very much. I don't really think about when I first got called up. You know, it's always kind of a process of moving forward. So you can see that the organization has done that since, you know, the first time I got called up. You know, we're definitely a different team now, and I'm a different player. So we're always trying to evolve for the better.
How has Homer Bailey evolved as a pitcher from year one till now?
Well, I cannot speak at myself in the third person, but you know, just the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, and you pick up things here and there. I mean, it's no different than any other job, to be honest with you.
Thanks for being our guest here in Pikeville. We're going to get some questions and answers from the fans. Homer, thanks for your time today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Homer Bailey, part of the 2014 Cincinnati Reds Winter Caravan from Pikeville. We'll step out and be back with more. Well, thank you very much, and welcome to the East Kentucky Expo Center in Pikeville as we welcome the 2014 Cincinnati Reds Winter Caravan. What a great panel we have here, don't we, Reds fans? Mr. Red in the house right here. We've got a lot of kids. We've got a lot of big kids at heart. some of us that have been around many years, and many more years than we want to mention, that have been Reds fans for so many years. As Reds country stretches out so many miles, it's a lot bigger than just Cincinnati, and I think these guys get a chance to see that. We'd like to thank some of the folks that make this event possible. Of course, Appalachian Wireless, the presenting sponsor for Cincinnati Reds baseball all season long on the Oldies Radio Network. We couldn't do it without them. Appalachian Wireless, a tremendous sponsor of Reds baseball, and they just happen to be huge Reds fans as well. And of course, the folks that this caravan wouldn't be here without, the folks from CincinnatiUSA.com, and we encourage you, if you're making a trip to Cincinnati this year, check out CincinnatiUSA.com. They bring the caravan to Pikeville. Reds fans, you don't want to hear me. You get to hear me every day, and you get plenty of that. I'll turn it over to our friend from Fox, Ohio, Jeff Pecoro. You know this guy. He'll introduce the panel.
Thanks, Andrew. It is great to be back here in Pikeville, Kentucky. For those of you who are maybe born and bred here, raised here, two of the greatest coaches I ever had in my life were from here, Hooker Phillips and Deverett Owens, and I learned so much from those two guys, and they're the best. I mean, unbelievable guys. And again, these tours are made possible for us with the Cincinnati USA Regional Tourism Network, and because of them, we're able to expand this year to 4 different legs. We go north, south, east, and west. So we cover 5 different states and all the cities in between, and it's been a blast so far. I know all of us are having a lot of fun at this. So without any further ado, let me introduce, and I'll start here on my right, down on the end. His name is Jeff Groppe. He's the Director of Player Development in his 9th season with the Reds and his 2nd as Director of Player Development, Mr. Jeff Groppe. And to my immediate right, for, was it 18 years, he and George Grand were in a booth, and of course the crafty left-hander who played for the Reds one season, I think, with the Cincinnati Reds, the Padres, Expos, and all places in between, and now in his 22nd year broadcasting the Reds, Mr. Chris Welsh. On my far left is a kid that, I call him a kid. It's amazing enough. We were just talking about this on the bus. He's getting ready to enter his 11th season in professional baseball. And I remember the day they brought him to Cincinnati and introduced their #1 pick, guy who has now thrown 2 no-hitters, the first guy to do that in a Reds uniform since Jim Maloney, Homer Bailey. Next to Homer is a kid in the next couple years hopefully you'll be hearing a lot about. He's an infielder with the Reds. He played on the 2012 National Championship team at the University of Arizona. And this past season, he was voted as the Reds Player of the Year in their minor league system. He won the Sheldon Chief Bender Award. Seth Mejias-Breen. And to my immediate left, a guy that you're all going to get to know. Back in October, he was named the 61st manager of the Cincinnati Reds after a couple of seasons as the Reds pitching coach, Mr. Brian Price. And what we'll do now is we're going to just open it up to you guys. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. We had a couple people out here with microphones. They'll come up to you and ask your questions. Anybody up here on the panel, and we'll do this for a while. And I will tell you this, after we're done, we're going to go over here on the left where these seats are, where Rufus, right over there in the white shirt sitting, and that's where we'll sign autographs, okay? Or take pictures or whatever you want to do. But right now, we'll open it up to questions. So raise your hand, and Andrew and his guys will come over there and jump at you, okay? Anyone? Okay, thanks a lot, Pikeville. We appreciate coming here. Let's go, guys.
Hey, it's been a good show.
Anybody?
Come on, don't be shy.
They're all shy.
This is for Manager Price. How do you expect to use Aroldis Chapman this year?
Yeah, the Chapman question. You know, it's funny because this time last year I was probably the loudest amongst Reds personnel to be in the corner of making him a starting pitcher. And the reason behind that is the fact that he was a young left-handed pitcher. If we didn't kind of kick the tires on that and take a look at it, we would never find out. ended up where we kept him in the bullpen. He had another nice year as a closer. My opinion now, with one more year of experience being around him, is his temperament, his skill set, demeanor is better suited for where he is. We'd like to take more advantage of his skills. I think he threw about just over 60 innings for us last year. I think we can increase the workload. There's different ways to use him. He'll be our closer, but I think we can also get him in at times earlier in the game. If, say, maybe Broxton needs a day off or Marshall, and we just want to go right after that 8th inning, we could see Chapman in there for a multiple inning save opportunity. We can see him in late game situations in a tie game on the road where typically you'd save your closer until you took the lead. And the reason we can do that in large part is because we're going to have 6 other guys down there that are capable to come in and close out a game at a time where maybe we've already expended Aroldis. So right now we have a bounty of riches in that bullpen. We plan on using all of them.
Very good question right here.
Well, I too had a question for Mr. Brian Price. I briefly got to meet you last year outside the Chicago Cubs Stadium outdoors, and I told you then that you were the best at what you did. Did you expect to be here now in this position this soon?
You know, I didn't for a couple reasons. Number one, you know, I'd done some interviews for managerial positions, but I just did it because I thought it would be a good experience. Wasn't even sure if it was something I wanted to do years ago. Then the last couple of years, it became kind of a focus of, you know, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. I'm not going to wait till I'm 55 or 56 if the opportunity comes. So I really embrace this opportunity. The other part is that, you know, my 4 years in Cincinnati, we've gone to the playoffs 3 times after a 15-year drought. So that speaks very highly of what Bob Castellini, Walt Jocketty, and Dusty Baker were doing to put us in a situation to get into the postseason. So I didn't see that I didn't anticipate Dusty being removed from his position. But I understand the responsibility that goes with taking over a talented team. Certainly, we all expect to do more than we've done. But don't forget, you know, I was reminded today that, you know, we played without the bulk of the year without Ryan Ludwig and Johnny Cueto, Jonathan Broxton, and Sean Marshall. That's some talent right there. And win 90 games, get yourself in the postseason. I mean, that's still a pretty good year.
Question right here.
Same for Mr. Price. What kind of managerial philosophy differences do you and Dusty maybe differ on, or what can we expect to see maybe a little different compared to your style to what Dusty was?
Well, I'm not as much of a matchup type of guy. I think when you have talent in your bullpen, there's not the same need to match a left-handed hitter with a left-handed pitcher and vice versa. So that's one of the things. You know, when you're bringing in a Jonathan Broxton or a Marshall LeCure, if you guys got familiar with Manny Parra last year, the good fastball slider and a split, those guys are legitimate. And when you have their statistical data next to you and the lefties hit 195 and the righties hit 211, those are good numbers. It's a different thing if you're bringing in a left-handed pitcher to face a right-hand hitter and right-handers are hitting 346 off of them. The reason I say that is because every time you have to take a pitcher out of a game, you're bringing another one in. We only had one pitcher, or J.J. Hoover had 69 appearances and led our team last year. And I can't remember the last time we've had a pitching staff, or I've been a part of a pitching staff that didn't have at least 2 pitchers that had over 70 appearances. So that in large part is the success of the starting rotation. But the other part for me is that we don't want to overextend our bullpen either. So that's one of the areas. The other part is I don't believe necessarily that you have to put a lineup together that always separates your left-handed hitters. So philosophically, I think when you have a left-handed starting pitcher, there might be some merit to separating your lefties with a right-hand hitter, especially if you have Ludwig healthy. And the other part is I think we need to really focus on re-engage and getting our fundamentals back in order, get our base running back up to speed, do a few things of that nature, and start teaching a little bit more again.
Question for Homer Bailey.
First of all, congratulations on your 2 no-hitters. And what does it feel like late in the game? What does the pitcher feel like during a no-hitter, like due to the pressure?
It's
glad I've got experience to answer that, actually. Both games were a little different. So the first game, it was I was more worried about not scoring, giving up a run, because we were only up 1-0. So instead of worrying about giving up a run or giving up a hit, I was trying to get the win. And I don't think at that time we'd clinched yet. So every win meant a lot. In the second one, it was kind of funny because before the game, it was a little bit of a payback since they beat us in that third game that I threw against them. And I just remember the last couple of innings kind of laughing to myself, well, here we go again. We're going to try to do this again. And fortunately, it worked out.
More questions?
Okay.
The floor is open.
Good talk.
Homer Bailey has never been asked a question about his upcoming contract, and he probably won't answer it.
Well, I was actually going to mention it a little bit, but I'm going to go a different way because that's probably not a fair question. But anyway, you've had the opportunity to work with Brian Price for 3 years as pitching coach. In your perspective as a player, what can he bring to the entire team that he brought to the pitching staff?
I'm going to use a word now that I've seen at least 1,000 times in newspapers now, and it's accountability. And I mean, I'm kind of getting tired of reading the word itself or even saying it. It's more. Brian's a really good communicator. You don't feel like you're working under him or above him. You're with him, and if you have multiple people on a team that all have the same common goal, and I believe it's like that in whatever profession you're doing, then you can have success. And that's the big thing. You know, there was never tugging one way, pulling the other. It was never like that. It was, we all have the same common goal, and not just with Brian, but with people he brings in, whether it was Mac Jenkins or other people in the room when we were doing things. And once you can kind of establish that common goal, you can really, excel. So I think having him as a manager, if we can get 25 guys all on the same page, and this is not a me show, it's not a he, it's not a stat, it's not a money, it's it is what it is during the season. This is the way it played out. Quit whining, quit crying. We need to go play the game right and compete. And I think that he's really good about settling all of those things, and we can, hopefully have a great year.
Open mic.
I'm good,
Jamie.
thanks.
This question's for Manager Price. Given recently with what's been going on with Brandon Phillips, how does that affect the team? And moving forward, what are your plans to deal with that?
Well, the Brandon Phillips issue stems really from an article that came out late in the season last year in regards to the contract negotiation that he had with the Reds, in particular with ownership and general manager and front office. And, it was one of those things where after it came out, it certainly looked pretty awkward. You could tell that was going to be an awkward situation because you don't really want to come out in the media and complain or, disenfranchise yourself from the people that you work with and for. So it created a few issues. I think to the credit of all parties, they were able to get together in the offseason and understand that, Brandon loves being with the Reds. He does. The fans have really embraced him. He's a terrific player, and that we want him to be in Cincinnati, but we also want him to appreciate what he has here in Cincinnati. And a lot of it is the support from people like you in the room, because he has a great following. He really does, and he embraces the fans. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. There's the things happening. If you think about all the things that are out there in baseball, what baseball's going through from time to time with the steroid stuff and things of that nature. The Brandon Phillips thing is really a kind of a guppy in a big, vast pond, as far as baseball issues go right now. But it's something that I think that you have to tip your hat to Walt and to Mr. Castellini to be able to kind of put it aside and talk about it and get past it and go into the season and have him one of the better players at his position, playing for the Reds.
Here we go.
Mr. Price, do you consider yourself more of a disciplinary coach or more of a player's coach? Or, I know Dusty was kind of more laid back, or your approach?
Well, I think I really do believe that playing the game the right way is black and white. It's played with preparation, high energy, commitment to being excellent at what you do. You can't have days off where we don't show up to play. And my point to that is the fact that we have a 5-man bench, and that's not a threat, it's just the way things are. And if you feel like you're losing energy from a position, the best thing to do is to plug somebody in there that's chomping at the bit to get in the game and play. So I don't know if that's a disciplinarian or not. I do know that you want people to want to come to the ballpark. You want them to want to be a part of the Reds and to buy into the vision and the focus of our team and our organization. In order to do that, it can't be so disciplinarian that nobody wants to be at the ballpark. That's never really been my style, but I think we also have to call guys out. If they're not getting it done, not doing it the right way, then we have to be able to hold them accountable.
Brian Price, Dusty Baker had a signature toothpick. Do you have a signature yet? Homer's nodding his head. Let's hear it. Maybe we should address this question to Homer.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, not yet. I was thinking about an eye patch. But you know, I don't know if that's going to fly with my wife. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be a surprise on opening day.
I tell you what, we can get you connected right here through Appalachian Wireless. Okay. Questions, Jamie?
Over here. This is for Manager Price. Last year, when Johnny Cueto went out, of course, Tony Cingrani seemed to step in and done an excellent job. Of course, he got hurt, too, against Texas and had to go out when you're interleague. What does our depth look like in the starting rotation if something like this were to happen without Arroyo being there no more? You know, just want to ask what kind of depth we have in the starting rotation.
Well, we did make we gave up a good player in Ryan Hannigan, but in return we got some of that depth in David Holmberg from Arizona, left-handed pitcher, pitched primarily in Double-A last year, had a one major league start for the Diamondbacks, big left-handed starting pitcher that's been extremely durable, strike thrower, one of the better prospects in the Diamondbacks organization that we feel provides us depth, immediate prospect depth right there. We've also re-signed Jeff Francis, Chin-Ming Wong, former Yankee right-handed pitcher, to provide us with some depth. Certainly our number one pitching prospect is Robert Stevenson, who will most likely start the season in Pensacola, and is a guy that we're still concerned a bit with the amount of innings that we're going to give him over the course of the year, but definitely a guy that could be pushing these other more seasoned veteran guys for time in the big leagues here in the near future.
Long-time Reds fan from actually studio control, Jeff Meek had a question that he wanted to pass along to Manager Price. If the season started tomorrow, is Billy Hamilton the Reds' starting center fielder?
Yeah, he is. It really is, at this point in time, his job to lose. One of the things that we focused on in the offseason was that just-in-case clause, because you can't do it for every position, but I think it's unfair to assume that Billy's ready and not have a backup plan. We have Chris Heisey and Skip Schumacher, both that can play center field. It could be a platoon outfield if we didn't feel that Billy was ready, but as of today, we're very optimistic that Billy's capable of doing the job. He's already ready as a defensive player, and don't forget, it was just a couple years ago that he was playing shortstop and some second base as an infielder and has turned himself into a great defensive outfielder. Just got to make sure he can handle the bat.
Question over here.
This one's for Homer. The last couple of years, you've been able to have Manager Price now as your pitching coach. How is that relationship going to change now with a new pitching coach? Are you going to be able to use the same positive influences from Manager Price, or are you a little hesitant? Are you optimistic, pessimistic? Just kind of see how you feel about that one.
Well, I trust whoever he hired in Jeff Pico is going to be a good fit. With Brian being around the last couple of years, I think he's probably got a pretty good idea of what kind of personality it would take to kind of go into our rotation and bullpen, and what kind of things we expect, and how he was always very approachable to us. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I would overstep him and go straight to Brian and to talk things out. But it is also good knowing that your manager, has experience either pitching or being a pitching coach. So if we kind of need a a deciding factor, if you will. We can always go get another opinion, and it's somebody that you trust who's been in that role.
Brian Price, I don't know if you realize or not, but the rumor was that Jeff Pico was hired as the pitching coach was because he began his professional playing career right here in Pikeville, Kentucky. Didn't know if you realized that.
Well, it was a deciding factor.
I thought so.
About that. I mean,
That's why this guy is going to be a successful manager. Jeff Pico, for those that don't know, began playing rookie league baseball here in Pikeville with the Cubs organization. He is the new Reds pitching coach. So we do have a tie to our pitching coach there, so we're good with that. Ashley?
I was going to ask you about the kid we got from Arizona in place for Hannigan. We were looking at the stats today that the trade was made, and we couldn't help but notice that being in the Arizona, he'd been there for a while. Was this somebody that you had maybe coached or helped along the way back in the days with Arizona that you had kind of had somebody in your back pocket to thought of?
No, you know what? Actually, Jeff Pico was instrumental in that trade because we knew that the trade partner was most likely going to be Arizona, and we had to figure out who was the best guy to go after. And they have I forget the kid's name. He's maybe the number one pitching prospect in baseball, and he was an untouchable. But the second, in our opinion, was Holmberg, the kid that we got. Now, he's a high school draft. That's why I think he's got about 5 minor league seasons under his belt to this point. But he's an extremely competitive kid. We talked to Jeff about him. He felt like he was going to eventually be some guy that could pitch very comfortably at the number 3 or number 4 starter spot in a good major league rotation. And again, you're always speculating with players. You're never sure 100% what you're going to get until they get themselves established at the big league level. But we're very confident that this guy can give us some support throughout the year, starting in 2014 if it's needed.
Okay, one last question, and then we're going to head to some autograph signings and pictures. Jeff?
I'd like to talk to Mr. Gruppe and ask him player development, how the minor league is shaking out on all 3 classes there.
Director of Player Personnel.
Yeah, thanks for involving somebody else. We're doing really well. I've been really happy. Our scouting director is Chris Buckley, and he's done an incredible job. If you look at our major league roster and what percentage of our team is either homegrown or acquired by trading some homegrown players for them, which I think is kind of a factor that gets underrated sometimes, the fact that we could go get a Matt Latos or a Chu or someone like that to supplement the major league team. I mean, free agency is not really an avenue for us right now, just competing with some of these larger cities and larger markets. So the depth that we have and that Brian mentioned, David Holmberg, Robert Stevenson, we got Seth Mejias-Breen, was an infielder who's our player of the year. I feel very strongly that we're going to continue to produce players to give Brian and Walt more and more options. So I feel like we're on the right path.
Okay. Let's send it to, let's head to this end of the room. We're going to have some autograph signing. These guys will all be available as they're signing, as they're taking a picture. You can ask a quick question if you have those, but that wraps up the public segment. And if you guys would make your way on down, get some individual time. You're tuned to the 2014 Cincinnati Reds Winter Caravan.